back to the 2023 verdict. We're coming to you live from Channels Television here in Nigeria. Well, Ismail Ahmed, as you've seen on that welcoming slide, joins us next. He is the Secretary, Policy and Strategy Directorate for the Tinubu Shatima Campaign Council. Of course, that is with the APC. Good morning. Thank you for coming on today.
It's good to see you. Happy New Year.
Yeah, good to see you too.
Happy New Year. That's true.
Yeah. Been a minute, yeah? But one wonders, what kind of strategy are you possibly coming up with? Because, I mean, looking through this fuel scarcity, you can't get hold of the naira, lots of confusion here and there. You need some strategy to convince electorates, particularly the young people now, that your man is the man. Can you do it?
Yes, absolutely, we can do it, and I think we're doing it right now. I think what has happened the last couple of few days, or rather a week or so, especially with the shortage of the naira, is we have been able to establish as a campaign and largely as a political party that this is not a policy that we agree with. This is not a policy that we're even aware of, you know, and this is not a policy that was discussed with anyone, and at least, you know, as far as I'm aware of, at the level of the party or the campaign or the hierarchy, so to speak, of people who are in government who are also party members. And I think a couple of few governors have either come here or have spoken in other places that they are absolutely unaware of it. It's not something that is imbibed or ingrained in our manifesto or our policy document. It's not something we've talked about at any place. It's not something that we even contemplated that, you know, few days to election, that we would have it sort of, it wasn't much of the policy that was wrong or anything. I think it was the timing. It was the callousness of the implementation and the framework upon which it was forced on people that we simply befuddling. We just couldn't understand.
So are you disowning the policy which the president approved of? We
are disowning the time frame. We are absolutely walking away from it. It's not something that we agree with, and we'll say it anyway.
Okay, I'm just trying to, because you talked about how you were not aware.
We're not aware of it.
Some people will say that the CBN is an autonomous, an independent body.
Absolutely.
And that the only body the only person whom it was mandated to get an approval from, it's gotten approval from, and the president threw his full weight behind that particular policy. Are you saying that he was unaware of the implications of the policy?
No, I'm not saying that he's unaware of it. He probably might have been aware of some, but certainly if the president knew that it was going to result to probably even pockets of insurrection here and there, protests in so many places, a hard-hitting, harsh reality of what's going on right now in the hinterland and rural areas is absolutely unbelievable. Because you have a situation where 60, as far as I'm concerned, 60 to 70% of the Nigerian economy is informal. And these are people who are on a daily basis trade with cash. And this cash is not something they stash away for a minute or for a day or for a year or for... No, these are people who are used to going out every day to be able to get how much they'll be able to spend on daily livelihood. And for all this, you know, because there was two major components that was worrying a lot of people, that certainly worried me with the policy. The first component was that your money was going to be worthless after a period of time. So people were battling to make sure that their money was not worthless. Then the second part was their ability to get cash. You know, I have paid my own staff who work in my farm in Kano, you know, and they were not even able to access their own money. And these are people that eat what? They eat what, 500 naira or 300 naira food on a daily basis. They're not going to use ATM to be able to access 300 naira or 500 naira food. So it's, I don't know what to say, but for whatever it happened, I know the CBN is autonomous, but you see, this is my philosophy about it. And let me give you just a simple example. In 2016, in the United States, during the presidential election of 2016, Hillary Clinton versus Donald Trump, I think about 4 weeks to election, James Comey, the then head of FBI, came up with a statement that Hillary Clinton had some questions to answer about her email, you know, using the private server for official correspondences. a lot of Democrats still today, including Hillary Clinton herself in her book, believe that that singular statement that Comey made was responsible for her loss in that election. Even though a week later he came out to clear her, but it was too late, the damage was done. There are semi-autonomous or autonomous agencies of government that there are policies or actions that you will take in an electioneering season that is no longer just a policy because it hits up the polity. It is almost tantamount to election interference.
Is the moral of the story here that this policy is almost like hurting your party?
Not my party alone. This, because we are in government.
Yeah, so his chances of winning.
So whatever, no, the chances of winning are still bright because we're working around it. But what I'm saying is that I will be foolish to sit down here and tell you that my party didn't take a hit as a result of this policy. That would be a lie. We took a hit, Chamberlain. We certainly did. I have been in Kano for the last 1 week. I know we took a hit. We're trying to recover now because people could see clearly that it was not a party policy. It was a policy that was probably formulated, as good as it might be, by a technocrat who came and convinced the president on the merits of it. And he has his own merits. There's no doubt about it. It has his own merits that convinced the president on the merits of it. And the president bought in on the merits of it. What we would have loved to see was a further discussion with probably Council of State, with probably the Federal Executive Council, with probably some hierarchy or the economic team to be able to have an input of everyone, because it is a policy that touches in every home.
Who's supposed to have done that?
I think the president ought to have done that. Absolutely.
It's interesting. I just heard you accuse the CBN of election interference.
Yeah, well, this policy, as far as I'm concerned, I'm not saying it's official, as far as I'm concerned, is tantamount to election interference, because whatever happens as a result of this policy, as far as I'm concerned, is election interference. Because it's an election season, you have taken a policy that directly hits at how emotional people feel towards an election. And because we have the fortune or misfortune in this case of being in government, we are directly being accused of that.
Well, some people would say that, you know, your fortunes were already in jeopardy by the time at the beginning of this year, for instance, because by December last year, before even before the introduction of the policy or the start of the policy, a lot of Nigerians are already finding another commodity, which they normally would get, quite difficult to come by. Petrol. Petrol has been scarce for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Since the floods that happened in many parts of the country, yes, there was an explanation, but after the floods subsided, a number of people started wondering, hold on, the floods are over now. How come we still can't get petrol? What precisely is going on? There have been questions around the management of subsidy. There have been questions around how much debt the implementation of fuel subsidy, which was one of the things that this government, your party, the APC, disparaged, how much debt it is plunging the country into. There have been questions also around, let me take them one issue at a time, but they're wondering why it is that of almost all of the policies which a number of Nigerians have raised concern about, one of them also being the petrol scarcity, how come it is that the currency scarcity has been the one that your party has been loudest on?
I think we've been loud on each one because, look, you talked about earlier in the year. Earlier in the year, it was not political season. It was not election time, right? Now, the issue, hold on.
According to who?
Hold on. It was not election time. The campaign started in October. You're talking about earlier in the year. Earlier in the year, that was last year. I'm assuming.
Late last year.
No.
Late last year, as far as January 2022, it was already election time as far as politicians were concerned.
Okay, but not officially. Election time is every time for a politician, but officially, election began in October. So let's get that clear.
Let's stay within the formal window.
Let's stay with that. That's not even the issue. That's not the point I'm trying to make here. The issue of fuel scarcity. I think a lot of people have gone through perennial fuel scarcity under administrations of the PDP, Obasanjo, Jonathan, and I think they appreciate President Muhammadu Buhari for being able to clear away, especially in December when, in the first few years of our administration, we've been able to clear up that. Of course, the floods hit. Of course, there's the Ukraine-Russia war, which affected global energy supply and the supply chain generally, and took a hit. And then we had issues. Everyone understood that. It was biting, no doubt about it. But people were able to access this petrol. Now the issues are compounding. People can take one bite at a time. And you can have an explanation like you rightly pointed out. You can have an explanation that people can relate to. You can say it's the floods, like you mentioned. People can relate to that because it is actually something, it's factual. You can say Ukraine-Russia war affected global supply. People can relate to that. But when you bring out a policy that is unforced, absolutely unforced, absolutely within your control, it was not outside your control. Supply of energy could be outside your control. You're in an OPEC, you're in an organization, it has to be sold, it has to be brought in. There are a lot of issues going around. So there are a lot of multiple players involved. That if one has a problem, you can have a problem. So people understand that. People are not as dumb as people think they are. They understand that. But when you have a policy that is absolutely unforced, on you, on your own, you just brought it on and forced it down on the people, then people will blame you because they understand that it is perfectly within your control to do or not to do that. It was not even the policy that hurts the most. It was the insistence, the callous insistence that it has to stop at a particular point in time, or people will lose their wealth, or you cannot transact.
But Ismail,
that's the issue.
Now, when do you accuse the CBN of coming up with this policy?
I'm not accusing. The CBN did it on their own.
Yeah, okay.
I didn't accuse them.
Now, the thing is, the president is on tape, excuse me, to have said there will be no going back on that policy.
Yes.
Are you then saying this is an own goal? He's vicariously liable?
No, the president said there was no going back. I told you based on the merits of the decision, the reasons that was given to him.
The box stops at his table.
Absolutely. And he has to take responsibility, and he's taken it. It has been shifted. And now I think there's a Council of State meeting, Council of State. That's the whole Council.
Did the president announce?
There's a Council of State meeting today, which a decision will be made. Governors went to meet him. They have appealed to him that, look, we need to shift this. And the president is looking at the merits and the demerits of that argument. But let me tell you where my issue is.
Yeah.
Every leader, every president is presented with a decision to make, right? What will be worrying is when a so-called expert or somebody who is supposed to know, and I mean the CBN is being run by someone who was in retail banking before he became a CBN governor. So it is assumed that he understands the banking infrastructure in this country, how far it has gone, where it is, what the limitations are. That is the expectation, right? And then you bring the merits of it. And like I said, nobody can argue that cashless policy does not have its own merits. It has a lot of merits. You know, there's too much money in circulation. That is true. There's a lot of counterfeit. That is true. There are a lot of criminals stashing away a lot of funds. That is true. There are a lot of things that we cannot trace. But I thought, as a technocrat, if you have your team together, there should be, if the target is politicians or kidnappers that have taken ransom or all kinds of people that have stashed a lot of money illegally, if that is the target, I think government would have been able or should have been able to put different methods of getting to these people to make sure that they put their money in banks. For example, you can simply say any BDC that takes cash other than transfer will have its license seized. So, which means BDCs will not take cash, so they will not give you dollars in exchange. You would have to make transfers, so you'll be able to trace that transfer. You can say that no property would be bought either in Lagos, Kaduna, Kano, Abuja, Port Harcourt, or any of the major areas. No property would be bought or sold. There must be deed of sale of that property. It must be registered. It must be by transfer. It cannot be by cash. So people cannot do money laundering through buying properties or estates or plots of land. There are many rules and regulations that you can put in place to be able to trace how much people have either in their homes or in their cash. We've already have a whistleblower policy where if you have a lot of money, you can report people, and some people have been caught, and some monies have been reported. People have gotten their 10% or 15%, whatever it is that government promised. I mean, the policy is good, but the time frame, not only the time frame now, the season we're in, we knew exactly what we were doing. This is not an accident.
You know,
it's very obvious.
The president has attended rallies in support of the APC presidential candidate.
Absolutely.
The most recent one, I mean, we just saw
Sokoto yesterday, yes.
And he, right there, could have seen or gotten fillers, even way before there, of what is going on about this policy. As you say, assuming he was misled by so-called professionals, as you were in your words. Just a minute. But why did he then have to wait for the governors to come and meet him and beg him and appeal to him?
Let me tell you something about President Buhari. He doesn't use political platforms or party platforms, so to speak, or partisan platforms, so to speak, to deal with national issues.
Not to deal with it. He could have gleaned intelligence. He's a top military man. He's been there before.
He is well informed now. Yeah. And like I said, they are going to have meetings, and I'm sure he's having multiple meetings with his team, with his economic team, with his financial team, with the Council of State, you know, to be able to get input from everyone so that he'll be able to advise CBN accordingly. And let's not forget, he can only advise CBN. CBN has gotten approval. The only thing now left for the president.
But CBN couldn't have come up with this policy without the president signing off on it.
No, that's what I'm saying. Now, because it has already been signed off, now he can advise the CBN to move it, which we hope that would happen. There's a Supreme Court judgment. I think it's neither here nor there. I think, you know, there's an argument whether or not that judgment would suffice. But what it has done primarily for us in the campaign is to be able to say clearly that these three governors, who are all APC governors, have clearly demonstrated that we are not in sync with this policy. And I think the president gets nobody's divided.
Division.
No, it's not a division. The president gets it now, but he has to take a decision now properly, so that he's
no longer going to advise the CBN. He's going to direct the CBN, not advise the CBN.
No, that's what I'm saying. He has to take a decision. He has to make a decision before the advice or not advice go on.
It's interesting because the AGF, even though he says that they will be obeying the Supreme Court, Supreme Court's order, he's still challenging. They're going to be appealing
I think the AGF is not necessarily challenging because of the policy. It's challenging because of the procedural manner or the future importance of a federal government taking its own decision.
But it's challenging nonetheless.
No, hold on. You see, I think what he is doing, I haven't spoken to him, he hasn't told me his reasons, but as a lawyer I can infer that the reason why he has to challenge it is because usually you use the Supreme Court as a court of first and only instance if there is an issue between the state and the federal government. The issue of monies and monetary policy is within the exclusive legislative list, which is the exclusive purview of the federal government. He doesn't think that there is a case between the federal government and the state government for the Supreme Court to assume jurisdiction to make an order of such nature. So what he's basically trying to do, if the federal government lets it slide, I think, that's his thinking, if the federal government lets it slide, then every other policy of federal government in the future can be challenged by any state, even if it doesn't concern them, you know, and go straight to the Supreme Court because a precedent has been laid. So he has to challenge it based on that procedure. Not because, I'm sure, not because he disagrees with the position of the state governors, for example, that this policy should be suspended.
It's a very tricky situation to be in, especially when you look at the fact that, you know, there have been allegations that there are certain people within the villa that do not exactly want the candidacy of your, you know, presidential candidate. They do not want him to succeed at the polls. This was something that was said by no less than one of the governors who has gone to court. So sometimes when you see this, it's very difficult not to interpret it politically as well.
Well, you know, I'm not in the speculative business. If the governor, I'm sure he has his intelligence. He knows the people he's talking about. I don't. I am not in a position to say one thing or another. But what I heard him also say is that some of these people, or these people that he is talking about, are not members of the party. So really, the party is not divided.
Sounds like you prefer an outright suspension of the policy and not a modification.
No, it can be modification, it can be extended. But my problem is, even if it is extended now, do we get the cash back? If 2.2 trillion naira has 2.7 trillion naira, so to speak, by the report, has been taken out of the economy, we're not going to get it back in the next few days. We're not going to get it back in the next 1 month. We're not going to get it back in the next 3, 4, 5 months, probably. Probably the aim is not even to get that much amount of money back. Maybe the aim was to go cashless. Maybe that is all true. But what we have right now is we have a serious emergency in our hands where people cannot cash their money and they are not able to take their children to school. They are not able to pay for transportation. They are not able to cash. So these are serious national emergencies, and I'm glad the president called Council of State to be able to resolve it.
All right, we'll wait to see what happens in that regard. But our colleagues in Lagos have got questions for you. Go ahead, guys.
Thank you, Chamberlain. Mr. Ahmed, it's good to see you again. The first question that I want to ask is, you've spoken around it, but maybe we should drill down a little bit. Those who would look at this issue that you're discussing in a different light, in the light that this is an APC federal government, the ease with which some, as Governor El-Rufai put it, fifth columnists are able to get around to the president to get him to do something that, as you said, a number of people probably didn't think through, which has inflicted, as you have also said, a lot of pains and hardship on people, is a little troubling. The ease with which they were able to get the president to agree to it is a little troubling. So if this could happen now under an APC government, what's to say that worse things will not happen, such that people are able to access the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and get that president to agree to inflict pains on Nigerians?
First of all, I did not say I agree or not agree. I didn't confirm or deny anything about any fifth columnist. I don't know. As far as I'm concerned, Ismail Ahmad, the only fifth columnist I identify is the CBN. That's the only fifth columnist, if there's anything like that, if you can call it with that nomenclature. Because as far as I'm concerned, the CBN is run by thoroughbred professionals. They went to the president, they gave him the merits and the demerits of such a policy, which I said has a lot of merits, and the president signed off on it. But now it has come home to roost because it is biting hard. And it has insisted, the CBN somehow has insisted that it's going to stick to this time frame regardless of the situation. As far as I'm concerned, so I don't know about the ease upon which to get the president, but let me speak generally about leaders and people around them and stuff like that. There's no leader who is immune to people who are around him who would whisper one or two things to him. I'm not saying that's what happened here. I'm not even sure, as at the time the CBN governor met the president, there was anyone there or anyone even knew about it. I don't know. I don't know if that has happened. I don't know. All I know is that CBN took a policy to the president, showed him the merits and demerits of it. Based on the merits of it, the president signed off. This is not a policy that we're happy with, and we have conveyed that to the president absolutely loud and clear, and I think he's taking steps to make sure that he consults more and be able to reconsider. And I think it's human. It's absolutely human to make a decision. And like some of the leaders of the past have said, I think it's Abraham Lincoln or something, he said, you know, it is absolutely unforgivable when you don't take a decision. But it is forgivable when you take a wrong decision or you make a mistake and you look at it and you review it again and you take another step. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. What is absolutely unforgivable is indecision. And in this case, we have made it very clear to the president, not because of only election, but because of the hardship that people are in. And of course, it's going to affect. We have taken a hit. Thank God we are recovering from it. We are going to go ahead in this election and we're going to win it. I'm absolutely certain of it. But regardless, we've taken a hit. And most importantly, let me say this, please, and I think it's very important that I say this. Most importantly, this is the president, Muhammadu Buhari, that has built a reputation from 1962 when he joined the army. He fought a war at 25. He became a governor at 33. He became a head of state at 41. He joined politics at 60. He was elected president at 72 after 3 attempts. And he has built a reputation of integrity and love for the masses. And that is why he was so loved that repeatedly from 2003 to 2015, he has been, and 2019, so to speak, he has been repeatedly voted by the overwhelming majority of the downtrodden and people at the bottom of the pyramid. And in his administration, I'm a living witness because I was in charge of one of the policies that he implemented directly. And I know how much there has never been a time, at any time in the history of this country, that people at the grassroots have received funding and have received help from a government like they have under Muhammadu Buhari. So he has built a wonderful reputation. He just turned 80 in December. No one, not Ashwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, not me, not Malam Nasir El-Rufai, or any of the members of this party would want to see such a beautiful reputation that has been built over the course of 60 years to be remembered as a person who gave us as a legacy this kind of hardship. That is one of our worry. For me personally, that I have been with the president for the last 16 years, that I've followed him through and through. You know, even before he started calling my name, till the day he started calling my name, I knew me very well, and I've started working for him. This is what worries me. I don't want to see this president have a legacy, and people would remember him as the president who walked away when Nigerians were crying and in absolute hardship. After 60 years of building a wonderful reputation and a reputation of integrity, and a person who has absolutely no material interest in life other than to give what he has gotten back to the masses. And I think he has done that in 7.5 years. So we will not allow, or will not keep quiet, even if this goes through. We will not keep quiet when people who have no idea how this man has built this reputation for such a long time would come with policy and just cover it under the guise of all the merits that it has to give Nigerians this bye-bye portion to Nigerians. That's what is unacceptable to some of us who are very close to the president.
Mr. Ismail, following up on my colleague's concern about the ease with which some members of the party or government would access the president and present policies to him, even though you make your position clear that this is not a party policy, that it's a policy of some technocrats. But your position is only slightly different from what other party members have presented on our program in reference to the Kaduna State's position, and yet another who say it's someone at the villa who is taking advantage of their influence with the president. What party members are unmindful of, don't you think, is presenting the independence and strength of character of the president as being somewhat questionable, so to speak, in taking decisions regardless of how well they were able to sell the policy to him or not. Aren't you concerned about that as well? And how is the party managing it?
Well, I told you clearly. I told you that we are proud of this president, no doubt about it. And I told you that one of our worries is the legacy that he will be living with. The books I have read on leadership and politics, the things I have seen on leadership and politics have taught me that if you have a 5-year tenure, 8-year tenure, 10-year tenure, 4-year tenure, whatever it is that you have, that of all the good things you would do in a country, it is the last 1 year of your administration that probably people would remember more. President Babangida, as head of state from 1985 to 1993, has done a lot of infrastructural development in this country. Third Mainland Bridge, the Kano-Abuja first dual carriageway. He did a lot of things, but what is he remembered for largely today? Annulment of June 12, for example. President Obasanjo, of all his misgivings, you could say he has had his own serious developments as a president as well. But what is he remembered largely for today? he tried to get third term. So the last year of an administration, the last year of a president or leader's term in office is always the most significant. So some of us that are worried about this policy are not necessarily, yes, election is a serious thing to consider, but it's also the reputation of this president, the legacy, what people would remember him for, that is worrying us. And we think he has a strong character. He has taken so many right decisions. He has done so many right things in the last 7.5 years. So if we disagree with this, and which is okay, which is absolutely okay. In every politics, in every democracy, in every family, it's okay to have disagreements about certain policies. In fact, it is encouraged. What is not acceptable is for that to degenerate into a conflict. That's what is never going to happen. This president is with us on all fours. We have made it clear to him that this is a policy that hurts people the most at the grassroots. And the people that are being targeted are not necessarily as hurt as the people who are hurting down ground. And this is a people's party. APC is a progressive people's party who considers people more at the bottom than at the top. And these are the people who are hurting and who are crying. And if they are crying to us, we'll cry to the president, and the president will reconsider. I'm sure he would. I'm hoping that today, after the Council of State meeting, we'll have good news about this.
And I wonder,
we can go back
if all of the implications were, well thought out ahead of time before execution began. Speaking of which, this is why little wonder where we are at the moment, because I noted that you talked about the Supreme Court judgment, that it's neither here nor there, and you also presented the decision to challenge the Supreme Court ruling by the Attorney General of the Federation as important, such that other policies of this government would not just be challenged in the future. In relation to that, are you mindful of the principle of separation of powers in this case? Are you saying that the wisdom of the executive should be taking wholesale in the future, regardless of the implications?
No, that's absolutely not what I'm saying. I don't know if you are listening to me quite all right. I'm just saying that it is the job of the judiciary, of course, to interpret the laws that have been passed by National Assembly. But the Supreme Court, procedurally, is usually the court of first instance in a matter of direct interpretation of a constitutional provision. And I said it, I confess that I didn't know if that was why the Attorney General did what he did. I'm just inferring as a lawyer that may be the reason why he was challenged by the federal government, not necessarily because the federal government still insists on keeping the deadline, but it has to be, a standard has to be set that if there are issues that have been decided by federal government or the executive branch, so to speak, and it is being challenged by another branch of government or another arm of government or another tier of government, that the federal government feels as if it has no right to do so, then it can go back to the appeal court and say, hey, you don't have jurisdiction because this is not a matter of a case between the federal government and the state government, and it's not a matter of case of direct constitutional interpretation. It is a matter of an interpretation of a CBN Act, of course, an act which was passed by the National Assembly, but it was not a conflict between the state and the federal. That is my assumption. I'm not saying that it was a discussion I had with the Attorney General or anything. I'm not claiming to know that.
All right, we need to go, but if you can do this in 60 seconds or less, the PDP say that Atiku Abubakar, their candidate, is offering 60% of the positions for young people. He wants to spend $10 billion to empower young people. What is your party going to offer them?
Sometimes some people, their mouths run rather faster than their minds. And I have, if you look at our manifesto, unfortunately we haven't discussed that, which is my expertise in this campaign. If you look at what we have promised and what we have clearly stated out that we are going to do for young people, it's not just promissory notes. It's not just all these platitudes, speeches that we do, 60%, 30%, all those affirmative things that that people like to call as punchlines in election campaigns. But we are serious about it. We're serious about education. We're serious about student loans. We are well aware that schools are closing. And then we look at how many people are being churned out from tertiary education and whether or not government can actually fund tertiary education in a sustainable manner. And then we're looking for alternatives, and we're giving reasons and methods of which alternative people can actually go to school. We're talking about actual development of skills, of people, of young people to be able to get jobs and hold themselves up by their bootstraps and be able to move from point A to point B. So and that has been clearly demonstrated
here's what
by Bola Ahmed Tinubu when he was in Lagos.
We will revisit the, we'll have a lot more deeper look at the policy, the strategy, the manifesto of your party at another date, that we'll examine that alongside several other parties, probably as we inch towards the big election date as it stands today.
And if we don't meet, you can congratulate me in advance.
Well, I'm just here to do my job as best as I can. Ismail Ahmed is the Secretary, Policy and Strategy Directorate of the Tinubu Shetima Campaign Organization, Campaign Council. Thank you for coming on. All the best.
Thank you so much for having me, Chamberlain.